All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Getting Started in Wildlife Management webinar. My name is Avalon Powell. I am the Senior Marketing Coordinator for Plateau, and I will be assisting our presenter, Tim Milligan, with moderating questions this evening. So this webinar is scheduled for approximately an hour. We're going to begin with some do's and don'ts of wildlife management, a recap of the required activities, and note some important considerations for record keeping and more. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up for a Q&A. However, feel free to submit your questions at any time. To do so, you'll need to use the Q&A feature of Zoom. So to access that, you should simply be able to scroll over your Zoom screen and you'll see a toolbar that pops up at either the top or the bottom of the screen. And on that toolbar, you should see an option for Q&A. If you click that, it will open up a separate pop-up box and you can type your questions directly in. After the webinar, if you have any further follow-up questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. We will be providing our contact information at the end. And of course, you can always feel free to reach out by giving us a call at the main line. So without further ado, Tim, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avalon. Thanks again for helping us pull this thing off. And thank you everyone for joining us. You folks are, I'd be probably pretty presumptuous if I said you were fortunate to be here, but I feel like, hopefully you'll get something out of this and you'll know some things before we're done that other people don't, which hopefully will help you along your way in wildlife management and help you enjoy this program. Kind of dragging my feet here a little bit just to give people a little bit time to show in. I want to welcome everyone. First thing to tell you, if you haven't met me or if you haven't talked to me before or know who I am, my name's Tim Milligan. I'm a sales manager here at Plateau. I've been with the company for, well, I found out yesterday, it's 13 years. I kind of stopped counting. It's the best job I've ever had. It's a lot of fun to work here, a lot of fun to work with landowners that we get. I'm just a guy in wildlife like the rest of us, is the way I look at it. I've got a property, my family does, it's in wildlife. We've been in it for, I think, a little over 7 years now. We didn't know anything about, I didn't know anything about wildlife management or the wildlife exemption program. I didn't know anything about it until I started to work here. If we had known about it long ago, I hesitate to think that we'd have stayed in ag traditional ag as long as we did. But I've been through all of this, gone through the same process as everyone else has as far as applying and doing a wildlife management plan and doing the activities every year. I like to think I've got a particular set of skills simply because of the experiences that I've had with this company and the folks that I work with and the landowners that I've gained that experience from. So I started at the company as a technician, treating fire ants, filling feeders. I actually hired on as a temporary technician and love that job because we were out in the field working for landowners and doing the work for them. And that's where I learned the importance of things like record keeping and documenting what you do. And so a lot of the experiences, a lot of things I'll talk about in this little webinar are going to be experiences that I learned, things I learned from being out in the field. And then, as an account manager here or region manager working out in the field with landowners and doing our presentations. Basically, I'm a guy that likes to talk. And I love doing this. I love sharing the information that we have and sharing more about our people, because I think that's what makes this company special is the people that work here and the care that they take. But again, I'll reiterate that I've done this. I'm involved in it myself. So the questions you have are the same questions I have. Don't be afraid to ask anything. I've done it well at times. I've made mistakes at times. I've made the big mistake of not sending in my report at the right time and actually losing my ag exemption and having to get it back. So I've gone, I've done it right and I've done it wrong. And so I've got a little bit to share, but anyway, that's who I am. I've been with the company for quite a while. And again, I work with a group of biologists here that I'm not a biologist. I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. If I don't want to make sure I make that clear. If I don't have an answer to any of your questions today, I'll make sure you get them from the right people. But that's just a little bit about me as we get started. So what we're going to cover, kind of some do's and don'ts of wildlife management is kind of how I like to go through this. It's kind of, it's what I think about is keeping it simple and think about the things to do and the things not to do. I think we cover the don'ts first, but then we'll go into the activity categories just a little bit, some things to consider as you're thinking about, getting into doing your activities and keeping up with this stuff. The resources and some things that can help, and then we'll answer your questions. I'll mention it a couple of times through here, but that's why we're here, is to answer your questions. I want to provide a little information because you came here, and I figured that's you'd like to get a little bit of information out of this, but really want to get to the questions and answers here at the end. This slide right here kind of sums up my view of wildlife management, or the wildlife exemption, of the activities that you're doing. Your activities, the things you're doing now, the things that are in your plan, the things that qualify you, are what you're doing instead of traditional ag activities. So they're what you're doing instead of baling hay, fixing fences, feeding cows, cutting timber, planting oats, whatever it is. The wildlife activities are what you're doing now. I think of wildlife as a crop. All right. So the wildlife on my land, I think of just like a crop of corn. And crops don't grow without some input from us. And that was the easiest way for me to understand it. I'm going to need to do some things if I want this to work. And that's where, you'll hear me talk about a number of times through this, that wildlife management is activity based. It's not results based. You need to put some input into it. You need to do the things you're supposed to do in order to, one, qualify, which is very important, and be in compliance with the requirements. But more important than that, in order to get something out of it. And to me, it's got to be rewarding. It's got to be fun, or else there's no reason to do it. And that's just a picture of my daughter. I'm doing this thing, so I get to look at a few pictures of my family here and there. But that's us out at the ranch, and it reminds me of the joy that I get out of this. It is fun to be out there messing around and doing these activities, as opposed to when I was younger and always seemed like we ever did was fix fence. That's just a personal experience of growing up, and some things that, experiences that I got while we were running cows, which, nothing against livestock, but it was just, that it was work. And it seemed like it was only work. There was a lot of fun too, but, this is to me a little more fun. So what we're going to talk about is really the goal of this thing is to help you get started, to get comfortable in wildlife management and stay that way. For me, the enjoyment in this thing comes when you don't have to worry about it. If you're constantly stressing over it or constantly worrying about it, something's wrong. So again, I mentioned that wildlife management, generally speaking, wildlife management is activity based. It's not results based. Just do it. Just do the activities, or have someone do them for you. But one way or another, as long as the activities are getting done, you'll never have anything to worry about. You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to have more small animals or more songbirds or bigger or better populations of animals. It doesn't say you have to be good at it. You just have to do it. You have to work towards that end. And if you're doing that, you will get results. But you're not graded on your results. No one's going to come out there and say, hey, is this working necessarily? They're just going to say, are you doing the activities? I got a question from someone the other day who was a nice lady who was treating fire ants on her property, and she was concerned about whether that was going to be a qualifying activity because she still had fire ants on her property, even though she was treating them. Of course it is. We're never going to get rid of fire ants, just like we're never going to get rid of hogs. But managing that population, doing the activity that you're supposed to do to try to control those, is what qualifies you. Follow your plan. If you follow your plan, it'll increase your chances of success. It'll increase your success and your enjoyment. So you have a plan. You have a good plan from Plateau, the input from those biologists who understand this program. And after the conversation with you, they understand your goals and why you're doing this. Follow that plan and you'll get a lot out of it. Doing the activities is the fun part. Think of it as it should be fun. If it's too much work, you're probably doing it wrong. So if you find yourself working too hard at this and not enjoying it, please call us. And I'll say that many, many times throughout this little presentation. Please call us. That's what we're here for. I'm often heard saying, we got you into this, we'll get you out. So if you get into wildlife management and you feel like it's not working for you, or you feel like it's too much work, call us and see if we can help. Falling behind and bad timing can make it less rewarding. That's what makes it more difficult and more expensive if you're not on top of it some. So let us help you stay on top of it. Remember, you're not in this alone. We're here. There's people like me here, and all the, I'm a small part of this company, but I'm someone who is actively doing this on my property. So I've got those experiences. And so when you call and you say, hey, I'm struggling with this, I get it, because I've probably done the same thing and I struggle with it and probably messed it up. I learned from failure. So don't be afraid to fail at this, and fail at it in a way that you can recover from. But don't do like I did and not turn in your report. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to try things. But remember, we're here and you can call us. That's the most important thing. If you get anything out of this, just don't forget to call us when you need help. So some do's and don'ts. This is kind of fun. We're going to run through this and then get to the activities part of this. Where I'll give some examples of the activities, but don't let this thing stress you out. We got you into this, we'll get you out. You got Plateau on your side. It shouldn't be stressful. You should get into wildlife. You should get yourself set up and you should be able to maintain your activities and feel good about what you're doing and go on down the road and enjoy your life. It's not supposed to be stressful. If it is, please call us. Don't wait until you're approved to get started. I got an answer. I sent out an email to some folks, to a lot of folks today to let them know about this webinar. And one of the questions was, have you heard back from my appraisal district yet? Do we know if I'm approved yet? Don't wait until you're approved to get started. You're going to get approved. If we send in your plan, you're going to get approved. If you don't, we'll fight for you. But I hate saying that. We'll fight for you. Anyway, if you don't, we'll work on your behalf. We'll make sure you do. But counties don't even have to approve this thing. They don't necessarily have to send you an approval. You may never hear anything from them. We're going to call and keep following up until we confirm that you're approved, but don't wait until you're approved. The worst thing that can happen is they send you an approval and then they come out and visit the property and you haven't started your activities, and then they turn around and say, well, you've been denied because you haven't done the activities. So don't wait until you get approved to get started. Get going, and then if something happens, we'll work on it with you. Don't expect to hear from your appraisal district about your approval. So they're likely not to send you anything. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We will follow up all the way until August and September sometimes to make sure that you get an answer, that you get an approval. Don't do just the minimum. So, you've got these minimum activities. It's a minimum of 3 activities in these 3 categories. We'll talk about those in a minute. We all kind of know what those are. You've got activities in your plan. I could get away with just putting 5 birdhouses or 10 birdhouses on my property. I've got 15 or 20. I could get away with just doing water, food, and shelter. But I want to do water, food, shelter, erosion control, surveys, and predator control. I want to do more than just the minimum, so I never fall in that trap of, I didn't do one of those and now I'm in trouble. I also believe that the more you do, the less scrutiny you get, because honestly, I turn in, when my annual report goes in every year, it's got 6 or 7 things checked off on there. And the appraisal district has to look at that and think, well, he's got to screw up on 4 of those in order for us to even have anything to look at. So there's not a whole lot of reason for them to spend a lot of time on looking through my annual report, because I'm not going to mess up on that many things. I'm going to do some of those completely. So that's the reason I will always say, don't do the minimum. Don't ever fail compliance by performing fewer than 3 activities in a year. So we all know the minimum is 3. 3 activities, 1 activity in 3 of those categories, 3 wildlife management activities in 3 different categories: food, shelter, water, and you're done. Water, shelter, census reports, and you're done. Food, shelter, predator control, and you're done. You can do just those 3 and get away with it. Again, I'll caution you, don't do that, but don't ever just do 2. There's no reason to. You can always call us at any point in the year and say, you know what, I only got 3 activities done. Can y'all come out here and do a bird survey? Could y'all do some fire ant treatment on my property? What can y'all do to help me get 1 more activity done? I'm out of the country and I'll never get it done. We were doing wildlife management activities last year for people on December 31st. Went out to somebody's property and completed their wildlife management activities in a day. So we can always help. We can always help if you need it. Don't ever fail compliance. Don't lose your ag exemption, because it's hard to get it back. And the other side of that is, don't think you have to do everything that's in your plan. Hopefully your plan you got from us has got a lot of stuff in it. It's got a lot of recommendations. You took advantage of that biologist and you asked them a bunch of questions and they put in a whole bunch of recommendations. You don't have to do all of it. You just have to do enough to qualify. Let us help you with that as well. Let us walk you through your plan. Call us and let us walk you through it and make sure you're doing the things you need to do and the things you want to do, but not more than you actually need to do if it's stressing you out. Don't think that you can only do what's in your plan. So maybe you've got, maybe you, for some reason, had your plan and it's somewhat limited. You only wanted 3 things written into it. Some people I think it's a mistake, but some people will want us to only do a plan that has 3 things in it: food, shelter, and water, because they don't want to show the appraisal district more than that, because they think they're going to be held to that account. That's not necessarily true. They're only looking for you to do those 3 things, and then they're pretty much done looking at it. But you can do more than what is in your plan. So if you decide, you know what, I want to try to do some other things that may not be in your plan, call us and talk to us about it. And let's talk about that. Or just try those things and do them. You can always call us and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing predator control, or I'm thinking about doing this, and we can help you do it right. But there's nothing wrong with doing more than what's in your plan. Like everything else, don't hesitate to ask for help. That's what we're here for. That will be a repetitive theme during this. Not trying to get you to spend money. I'm trying to get you to remember to call us and use us for help. It rings true and rings with me, and I'll never forget it. When I talked to someone about their plan being a 5-year plan the other day, and they said, well, does that mean I've only got access to Plateau for 5 years? No, you have access to Plateau for as long as we're around, as long as you own the property, as long as you want us. You have access to Plateau. Whether you have us redo your plan or you do anything else with us, you can always call us, because we were out there. Our biologist knows your property. Our people know you, and we can always help you. That's just a picture of Roadrunner. It made me laugh when I looked at it, so I wanted to throw it in there, kind of break up the do's and the don'ts. And he looks like I do kind of at this time. What in the world is this guy talking about? I know I'm going kind of fast, but I want to get to the questions. And these are just the do's and don'ts, or just kind of what's on my mind to try to give you a better feeling about this thing. So the do's, now the important stuff. Do get organized and prepared. Read your plan. Take a look at that plan, open it up, read it. Inside there, you've got your wildlife management plan, which is going to have all the summary from the biologist and all the information that they can give you to help you follow that plan. Read that plan and get an idea for what am I into now. Get started early. The earlier you can get started, the better. I had a gentleman call me, this is a few years back, I had a gentleman call me in November and said, I need a turkey feeder, one of our big feeders. I need a turkey feeder. I need 10 acres of fire ant treatment. I need a bird survey, and I need someone to come out here and do some brush management. And I thought he was talking about getting a service agreement for the following year. And he said, no, I need it done before the end of the year. I haven't done anything this year. So don't be that guy. Get started early. Get those activities done, get started on them so you feel comfortable and you feel good with this and you can relax a little bit. I've already done enough activity on our property this year to qualify for the full year. If I didn't do anything else all year long, I would qualify. I feel comfortable knowing that I've done enough. I'm going to do things. I'm going to go back out there and repeat things and have plenty of information to show the county if they were to ask, or when they ask, they will ask. But I feel good knowing that I qualify right now, so I can relax a little bit. Go fishing, go do the things I enjoy and not worry so much about this. Do more than is required. We talked about that. You need 10 birdhouses on your property, put out 15. You need to do 3 activities, do 4 or 5. Technically you could get away with having one water source, put out a couple. Checking birdhouses, they're supposed to be checked, requirement, you can get away with checking them once a year, check them twice a year. My place, I need to do 10 acres of fire ant treatment. I do, 15 or 20, because it's not hard to do. And I feel good doing more than is required. Do keep good records. That is peace of mind in itself. Keep good records, take lots of photos. So keeping good records is the key to peace of mind when it comes to wildlife management. Either you keep them or have us do your activities and we'll keep them. That's what when I first started here, I learned that, Tim, if you don't keep good records, if you don't take photographs and document what you did for this landowner, it's like you were never here. I was being paid to do it. You folks, nice folks like you, were paying me to do your wildlife management activities. So I had to document it. I need to be able to tell you what I did. That's the way I look at my wildlife management activities now. I act like somebody's paying me to do them, like I'm the ranch hand out at the place and I'm being paid to do this. So because my sisters and my brother rely on me to keep our ag valuation up, our exemption up. So I keep good records so I can prove that not only to the county, but to them too, to show them what I did. They like to see it. They're not really that involved, but they like to see it. So I look at it that way. And because I do it that way, I don't ever worry about anything, because if somebody asks me what I did this year, I grab my folder and show them everything that I did. It also helps me because I can go back into future years and look at it. The reason I do that is I'm always thinking about my annual report. So be thinking about your annual report. Be thinking about the fact that your county is probably going to ask you to prove what you did. And because I'm thinking about that throughout the year, I'm thinking about what am I going to put in my report at the end of the year. So I'm out there filling a feeder. I know, hey, I need to take a few pictures because I want to be able to put that in my report to prove that I was here. So be thinking about that annual report. Expect your property to be inspected by the appraisal district. They may never come out there. Chances are they won't. Most appraisal districts don't have the time or the manpower to come out and inspect every property, but expect it to happen. That is another part that has helped me be really good at just, keeping documentation. Trust me, I don't overdo it. I don't burden myself with all this documentation, but I do enough to where if somebody wants to come out and see what I've done, not only can I show it to them, but I can show them what I've done with it. So it's one thing to show an appraiser the birdhouses that are on your property or the water sources on your property. It's another thing to be able to show them the documentation, the pictures and the receipts or whatnot, to show them that you've been actively managing those things. Because again, it's activity based, meaning just because I have a water source out there, I need to show that I'm checking it. I need to show that I'm active in my management of it. And that's a picture of my son a long time ago. Um, it's one of my favorite pictures. That is just pure joy. Ran across this the other day. Avalon's been nice enough to put it in a couple of presentations for me. It just makes me smile. I don't know that you could even define the kind of joy that's on that face. But again, it reminds me of why I'm in wildlife management. And I hope some of you are having a great experience in this. My job, I feel like, is to make sure you do. My sales team, the region managers out in the field, Kira and Sharon at the office, Cameron Bain, our account manager. Our job, I feel, is to make sure you understand all this and you're not overwhelmed by it. I talk about to my landowners how our biologist job is to make sure that you get the absolute best plan you could possibly get, bar none, the best recommendations, biologically sound, good information that's going to pass muster with the county and make sure that you get the best possible information and recommendation for your property. Our job as the sales and customer service part of this operation is to make sure that you're not overwhelmed by it, that you understand it and you get some joy out of it. And that to me is pure joy. So what do I do now? Well, I'm in wildlife management. What do I do now? First of all, get something out of all this. Enjoy it. Get some reward out of it. Watch your property recover. Get some enjoyment out of it. Make it easier on yourself. Make it easy on yourself. Don't make this too difficult. Get some help. Use Plateau to get help if you need it. That's what we're here for. Cameron Bain. This right here. This is what you do now. I'm going to hit on this a couple times throughout this presentation, but it's just the nicest person you ever want to meet and extremely helpful. This is what she does. She is our landowner account manager. Cameron has been with this company for 14 years, 14 years dedicated to taking care of our landowners. She is, you see the pictures sometimes of the hen that with the baby chicks underneath it, that kind of thing. She is just dedicated to making sure that our landowners have the best experience possible. She has experience helping throughout the process. Just remember that name. Remember Cameron Bain. I put her email address on here if anybody wants to contact her. I know she's listening in, and if you have some questions, I believe she is. If you have some questions that she needs to answer later, I'll try to get answers from her. But her role, basically, our region managers go out and they talk to you about wildlife management and tell you how good it's going to be and everybody enjoys it and you want to move into wildlife management. Our biologist gives you all their recommendations and tell you how this whole thing's going to work for you. They do your wildlife management plan. Cameron Bain is there to make sure that you have a good experience with it and get all the help you could possibly need if you need it. And she understands this whole process because she's been working with our landowners for a long time. She knows all about our products and services that are designed to make it easy for you and designed to make it more productive. She handles our service agreements, our wildlife activity service agreements. So we have landowners that use our services for us, not just to do the wildlife management plan, but they hire us to do their activities for them too. Some or all. Sometimes they hire us just to do one or two things. Sometimes they want us to do all their activities because they want to go do something else. And Cameron maintains those and renews those every year for those people. And each one she looks at carefully to make sure that they're getting the things they need and not things that they don't. She also works with our landowners to make sure they get the annual reports that they need, the reports that are required by the county. We do over 1,000 of those now where we're sending annual reports to the county where people treat us like an accountant. They send us all their documentation, all their information, and we compile everything into a report that the county's going to understand. Cameron can help you through that process and get you into that team, that part of our team that can take care of that for you. One of the most important parts is that she has the ear and the attention of your biologist and everyone else here. They listen to Cameron. She'll know what recommendations your biologist gave. She can always look up things that are in your account and in your plan, but she can get their ear very quickly if it's a question that she has about what you need or what you don't need. She knows the things that you need and the things that you don't. She's our best asset for you if you want help getting started. That's as simple as I can put it. So I want to make sure and introduce you to Cameron so you know who she is and you can contact her if you need to. So now we'll talk just briefly about the wildlife management activities. So you know the 7 categories. We've looked at those. You know, you've got your wildlife management plan. So these are the 7 categories, and you understand your requirement is you must complete at least 3 of these 7, one thing in at least 3 of these 7 categories. So, habitat control, whether it's things like game population management, planting native grasses, brush management, clearing cedar, clearing mesquite, yaupon, weesatch, other things like that, prickly pear, different types of habitat control. Those are great activities, and we can go into detail about how much you need to do, but your plan should be pointing out how much of those you need to do. The key is documenting them, taking some documentation and completing that. Erosion control, the activity of providing, fixing spillways, putting rocks in a stream to slow water down, different types of activities like that. Great activities because they have a longer shelf life. I like to throw at least one water-related activity in my wildlife management activities because I can kind of leave that one alone. I can stack rocks in a creek or put brush on a hillside to slow erosion, and that qualifies for 10 years. If you have more questions about that, please let me know. Or if you want specific examples, hopefully in these questions that we get to in a little bit here, hopefully, y'all provide some examples of the activities that you're doing. And we'll talk about those if you have questions. Predator control, a good time to talk about documentation one more time. Remember, I said documentation is very important. It's what gives you peace of mind. If you're keeping good documentation, you can never go wrong because you can always show someone what you've done. If you go out and treat fire ants and you didn't document that you did it, you didn't take a few photographs, write down the date that you did it and how long you spent doing it and where you did it, you can't prove it to anyone. So if somebody asks you what you did, all you can do is say, well, I treated fire ants. Well, do you have any proof of that? Well, no, I don't. And that doesn't look very good. The appraisal districts get audited too. So we need to be able to prove our activities to make their job a little easier. Again, fire ant treatment was the first thing I did with the company. And that's where I learned that, hey, you know what? You can spend a whole day out here doing fire ant treatment. If you don't document what you did, can't help it. It's like you were never here. So keep that in mind. And that's a good activity to look at, this predator control. If you trap hogs and you haul them off somewhere, you really, unless you took some photographs, you don't have any proof of it. It's another chance to talk about that it's activity-based, not results-based. We're never going to get rid of fire ants, but the activity is going out there and taking and controlling or monitoring and controlling the population, or trying to. Fire ant control, not fire ant eradication. Food, supplemental food, whether it's grazing management, moving cows around, food plots, mineral supplementation. Our feeders, we've got these products and services that are designed to make this easy for you. So check with us about the feeders that we have to see if we can help you get started and maintain those for you, even if you need us to. Supplemental water, another great activity. Obviously, if that's in your wildlife management plan, there's lots of different ways to do it. I have a gentleman right now who's looking at getting some of our water systems to add on to a bigger one that he has. He just likes the roof design. We've done the work instead of you having to build a roof yourself. So our water collection systems are great because they'll work anywhere. You don't have to have plumbing. You don't have to worry about something freezing. But those are great activities, and your maintenance is very easy because all you have to do is go and take photographs to show that it's working every once in a while. Fill it with some water or put some water in it if you need it to. Taking care of your own windmill or taking care of your old troughs that you have out there. If you have existing troughs and you want to use those, you can modify those for small wildlife. And I can explain more about how to do that, or you can call us and ask us. Supplemental shelter, again, that's an easy one to show somebody. It's an easy one to monitor. It's a fun one if you have kids to go out there and check those boxes and show them the nest. They can learn a lot from this. For each of these activities, you can learn things about what's going on your property, and you can use the things you learn to make better decisions going forward. We weren't having much activity in our nest boxes. This is an example. We weren't having much activity in our nest boxes at all. And because of the weather and because of the climate and everything, we were having trouble keeping them on trees. I don't know if the trees were just old or what the deal was. We stopped doing it because we weren't seeing much success out of it. We weren't seeing a lot of nesting activity. It turns out we've got way too many trees, way too many old dead trees So there's a lot of cavities, there's a lot of places for birds to nest. They didn't need the birdhouses. So we stopped doing birdhouses and started doing something else. So paying attention to the activities you're doing and watching and keeping notes of it, and using that information to help you make decisions about activities going forward. And then talking to your biologist about, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Should I continue doing this, or is there something else that I might get more out of? Again, getting some reward out of this and some joy out of it is, to me, part of it. Don't just do something because it's what somebody told you to do. So census counts are great. I love these activities because even though wildlife management is activity based, it's fun to know what's going on out there. Camera surveys are great because you can see things that are going on your property while you're not out there. A few years ago, I I rigged up a ring camera, a live camera on my property with a battery and a little Wi-Fi puck and the whole 9 yards, to where it would ping my phone whenever something walked by this feeder, whenever something came to the feeder. And we could sit here and watch animals come to the feeder at our property live on my phone, just through this little ring camera, just like you'd see somebody coming up to your doorbell at your house. I'm just giving you an idea. It's kind of fun. It's a little interesting trying to put it together. If you're interested in doing that, I can help you with it. But you can put that thing together and it'll ping your phone. You can pull it up, and the kids could even yell at the hogs. So the hogs would come to the feeder, the ring camera would go off, and we could watch the hogs, and they would yell at them, and the hogs would scatter. They could talk to the deer and talk to whatever else was out there. It was kind of fun. Just like you were talking to somebody on your Ring doorbell. But if you want more information about that, you want to hear about how to put it together, I'd be happy to share that with you, because it was a lot of fun. And I used some of the photos that we took, and the fact that we were sitting there, we could sit there and watch a feeder while we were at home, just like I was sitting there watching it at the ranch. And so that was a survey type. I was sitting there watching the activity on my property, sitting in my living room. So now, that's just a kind of recap of the activities. Y'all know what they are. You've got a wildlife management plan. Talk about some tools and some things to consider as you're going through wildlife management. First of all, tools. Use the tools. There's a lot of tools that you have. Your wildlife management plan is the tool you'll use most. Use that wildlife management plan, look through it, read it, refer back to it. Use the contacts that are in it. Contact us, contact your biologist, contact Cameron Bain whenever you have questions. Log sheets. There's log sheets that are in there, an activity calendar to tell you, when to do certain activities. Use your camera. For me, that's the most important one that I have, because I take photographs. I don't do it to an alarming degree, but I take photographs when I'm out on the property doing wildlife activities, and having my phone with me is the best way to do that. The GPS is nice. It's good. It's not a must. Maps are helpful. You've got some maps with your plan. You can get those blown up. We can blow them up and give and provide bigger ones for you. Use those as a planning tool. Log books, notes, calendars, that kind of thing. I watched a guy one time. I was on a property. A landowner asked me to go out and meet with his ranch manager, and I thought, okay, man, cool. Went out and met with his ranch foreman, a guy that was doing all his activities for him. Lived out on, or didn't live on the ranch, but lived close by, and he was doing all this gentleman's activities for him. And as we rode around the ranch and we checked the hog traps and we checked the bird houses and did other things, I watched him take dubious notes. He had this little notebook, just a planner. And then on the date that we were there, he was taking notes. And then across the other side of the page, he was taking more notes. And he would talk about, baited the hog trap with this. And he wrote down the time and this kind of thing. And I watched him take those notes, and I thought, man, that's how it's supposed to be done. Well, the reason he was doing that is that somebody was paying him to do it. The guy who owned the property was paying him as his ranch hand or his ranch foreman to do those activities. So he was documenting what he was doing for that person, that's the way everyone ought to do it. If you do it that way, you'll never worry about any of this stuff. But keep all that stuff, because that's all the information that can help you in that final step, which is your annual report. These are just some examples of the log sheets. We can provide these log sheets to you. We've created log sheets that go along with the different activities to help you keep good records. They kind of remind you what needs to be done. And so if you fill in the blanks in the log sheets, you'll know, hey, I'm taking good records, because it asked you, did you keep a receipt? Did you keep a photo? That kind of thing. And so if you're checking those boxes off on there, you'll know you're keeping good records. One of the things that's in your wildlife management plan is this timing document. And I think it's great. It's nice, it's colorful, but more than anything, take a look at the dates. Right now we're in April, May kind of time frame. It's a good time to do fire ant treatments, good time to do control of cowbirds, bird surveys. We're doing a ton of bird surveys right now. You can see that up towards the top. Quail counts. There's some summer quail counts. When you get into the fall, there's another type of quail count that you can do. This is a great time for reseeding. It's a great time to do chemical brush management, census counts, supplemental water all year long. So this is the time to do those. You'll notice, supplemental food, the food activities are not necessarily May, June, July. Everything's growing. You don't necessarily need that much food right now. As you get farther into the winter, you get, dead of the summer, that kind of thing. That's when you want to do food. So anyway, those are when your food activities are primarily being done. I just noticed that we don't have filling your feeders on here. At least I don't see it. Anyway, these are more natural type things, I guess. But anyhow, and that's something for me to consider for later. Anyhow, but that's in your wildlife management plan. Refer back to it. And again, if you don't want to refer back to it, call us and ask us. I took a picture of this thing, or actually took it and put it on my phone. So I always had access to it, because I get asked questions every once in a while. Is this a good time to do this? And man, I don't remember off the top of my head. I never will. And we get all the time, people will call, is this a good time to do a deer survey? Man, I can never remember what the right time to do a deer survey is. It's basically October through November. August through November, depending on whether you're doing it for hunting or not. There's different times to do different things. It's the best time to do fire ant treatment. I forget that too. I know it's fall and spring, but I forget the dates. So take a look at that and use that tool. So the next is take action, kind of like that owl up there. Take action, take flight, get into this stuff and enjoy it. Do the activities. That's the important part. Is if you're doing them, you won't run into any trouble. So remember the activities, remember your plan, take action, get into it. Assistance and resources, stuff that's available. And I'm sorry if I'm going too fast through this. I hope I'm not. I hope y'all are getting something out of this. I want to get to your questions. I feel like y'all have listened to me long enough. But again, I'll remind you, refer to your wildlife management plan, visit our website, sign up for our newsletter. So our Plateau Seasons newsletter, you can go to the website and there's a place to sign up for our newsletter. Sign up for that newsletter. Make sure you get it, because it comes from our biologist. It has lots of great articles that will help you get more out of your wildlife management plan and more out of your wildlife management journey. Call us when you need us. Oh, don't forget Cameron Bain, our landowner account manager. If I haven't talked about her yet, I'm kind of fond of her and fond of the fact of how she takes care of our customers. Use her as an asset. Use her knowledge and her experience over these years to make sure you don't miss anything. She is one of those people that helps me make sure that I'm not doing things that I don't need to do on my property. When I say, if you're working too hard at this, or you feel like you're putting too much, you're working harder at it, then you're probably doing it wrong. She's one that can help you make sure you're not doing it wrong. So I'll encourage everyone to take that to heart and, look through your wildlife management plan. Take the time to call her. If you have questions about getting started, schedule a time to talk with her, schedule a time to spend some, a good amount of time making sure you get started right. So to summarize, follow your plan to make your experience rewarding. Proper timing improves results. So that timing worksheet, if you do things at the right time, you're going to get better results out of it. Keep good records, use your tools, look for little rewards. Little things mean a lot. I saw a turkey on our place for the first time a few years back. It was the first time we'd ever seen a turkey. It was amazing. That to me, man, I was all of a sudden I went, this is worth it. This is cool. I don't have this video in here. Avalon had it in. I took it out, but my daughter and I sat and got to watch a bobcat walk across our property for I don't know how long, but got to sit in a blind and watch it. And that was the reward. That was it for me. As long as I don't do anything else, I'm going to keep doing wildlife management and hope to see that little guy again. Ask questions, use Plateau, and have fun. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being here. We're going to get to some questions now. I can't wait, because hopefully, it looks like we've got some questions coming up. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate y'all being here. Please ask the questions. Avalon may go. I'm going to go over this again. There is a question and answer tab up at the top. I think when you scroll up to the top, it pops down. If you have questions for me, drop them in there. Avalon's going to read them and read them to me to make sure I get to all of them. But if you have questions, you've been sitting here listening to this, you didn't hear us talk about how to enter questions at the beginning, just go up to the Q&A part and enter your questions in there, and we'll try to get to them. And with that, I want to thank you, and let's get to some questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Our first question here is, when is the annual report due, to whom, and in what format?
Okay, so the annual report format is a Texas Parks and Wildlife document that you can get on Texas Parks and Wildlife's website. I believe we have it. It's accessible on our website as well. We can send it to you. But it is a Texas Parks and Wildlife form. It's a checkbox kind of it looks a lot like your Texas Parks and Wildlife management plan, the basic one that's just, it has a list of the activities, and then you check off what you did, and then you provide documentation with that. The better that thing's done, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad that's the first question too, because your annual report is oftentimes the most important thing you're going to do from here on out. Do the activities, keep documentation. Your annual report is the only thing the county will ever see that proves to them that you're doing that in most instances, because they're not going to have time to come out to your property. So send them a good annual report. The year that I got turned down, the year that I messed up, I didn't turn my annual report in on time. When I finally did and I sent it to the county, she told me, she said, I wish everybody would send them in that looked like this, because I did it very obviously. I was in trouble. I did it very complete, and it had plenty of documentation. She said, when I look at this, there's no question that you did your activities, and no one will ever question me that I approved your wildlife management, because I've got this report to go along with it. So it's a simple form, but then you want to provide documentation with it. That's the important part. They're normally due, every county's a little different, and they usually bump this up a little bit. February, March, it just depends on your county, and we can find that out for you. If you want to ask specifically, send an email. You can send an email to me or to Cameron, and she can answer that question for you as well, as far as when it's due. And each county is going to be a little bit different as far as when they're due. But again, that's you don't want to miss, you don't want to miss that deadline. I can tell you that. And we can help you meet it. So I mentioned we do those. It costs $495 for us to do your annual report for you, and that's a ongoing process. We don't just do the report; we actually follow you throughout the year, and we remind you: are you doing your activities? Do you want to send some documentation? You get these constant reminders for us. If you want to talk more about annual reports, I'd encourage you to call Cameron Bain, and she can explain more about how that program works and what we do.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Are your fees, or really any wildlife management fees, tax deductible in any way, or can they be added to the cost basis of the property?
So that's going to be a good question for your accountant. I mean, it's up to the landowner and what they're doing on their property and whether they have a revenue stream or not. And, you know, so, there are properties that, because they have a revenue stream, maybe you have a bed and breakfast on the property, or you're allowing people to come out there and do bird watching and something. And in those cases, you can write off some of the expenses that are towards it. But that's a better question for your accountant. It's not something I know about.
Got it. So you mentioned fire ant control. What other activities satisfy predator control other than the obvious, hogs and coyotes?
Sure. So predator control, of course, there's fire ants, cowbird trapping. There are some people that do cowbird trapping, depending on, whether it's necessary. Native predators, raccoons are nest predators. If you want to trap raccoons, there are, of course, coyotes and foxes and other native predators like that. Hogs and fire ants are kind of the primary, predators. There are other predators, but most of them are, the native predators they're not an issue. They're not a problem. If you've got way too many raccoons and they're killing all your songbirds, then maybe so, but, foxes and coyotes and things like that, it just depends. If you've got a large abundance of coyotes. We were on a property one time where the guy had quail and he had turkey, and then we had done bird surveys there for years, and all of a sudden he didn't have any more turkey. He wasn't seeing turkey anymore, and he wasn't hearing quail. Well, we did a couple of game camera surveys and found out he had a whole bunch of coyotes that had moved in. So it was time to clear those out, time to remove some. I've got coyotes on my property. We did a camera survey there and baited it and got some coyotes. And I was concerned about them at first. And when I talked to one of our biologists, he looked through the pictures with me. He said, Tim, look at these pictures. He said, those coyotes look like pets. They're fat and happy. These are not mangy little scroungy animals that aren't eating. These are happy animals. They look healthy. And in the 3 frames later, you've got 2 or 3 white-tailed rabbits running around. You've got squirrels, you've got quail and turkey and whatever else. They're not a problem. You've got a few there, but they're not a problem. They're not killing your little deer. They're not hurting anything. Leave them alone. Deal with the hogs. So anyway, there's a lot of different predators. It kind of depends on your area and, specifically, what the issue might be. So if you're thinking about, managing native predators, I just encourage you to talk to your biologist first. Makes sense.
Awesome. So I'm having trouble getting a fence. I really need to fence out cattle, sheep, goats, and donkeys. I have been trying to hire a fencer since last November. Any tips or help?
Wow, no. No, I think, man, contractors in general people are busy right now. There's a lot of people moving out to the country. There's a lot of new land, a lot of people that are spending more time on their property and doing those projects because of all this COVID stuff and the time that they've got to do it, I guess. So yeah, now as far as a fencing contractor, if you want to contact me, send me an email. I don't know what county you're in or where you are. But in this area around Austin and Dripping Springs, we have people that we know that we can send you to. And maybe because you were referred from us, it might get you a little quicker response. So if you want to reach out to me, see if I have my email. There's my email right there, tmilligan@plateauwildlife.com. If you want to reach out to me with your fencing question, I'd be happy to refer you to someone that I know that might be able to help.
Awesome. I have 44 acres and I'm managing for turkeys, songbirds, and pollinators. Am I allowed to have a drinker near my house, or does it have to be outside the acres exempted from wildlife management by the appraisal district?
No, so you can have one near your house. The one near your house won't be your qualifying activity. So I've got two near my house, but they're not part of my wildlife management. The wildlife management product or wildlife management activities go on out in the field. So while I may have a drinker near the house, I've also got one out in the pasture, if that makes sense. But you can have bird houses around the house, hummingbird feeders and those kind of things, but anything you have around the house won't be a qualifying activity. You want to make sure that if you're counting that as one of your activities, it's outside that area, if that makes sense. But it doesn't mean you can't have one there too.
Got it. So, what data am I supposed to compile from the 5 game cameras? They have a ton of photos, but they're not sure what to do with them.
Sure. Okay. Now, good question. So, a couple different ways you can do that. One, if you want to pay a biologist to actually analyze those photos, we do that. It's not terribly expensive. I think it costs $250 per camera or something like that, where you can send those photos and kind of give us an idea of when you took them and how you baited the station and those kind of things, or how that area was baited. And our biologists will look at them and give you their recommendations based on what they've seen, and give you an actual report that is kind of a compilation of all that data and their recommendations and their summary of it. And you can use that if you show that to the county. That'll obviously be a qualifying activity because you've gotten biological, qualified recommendations. Short of that, do it yourself. So my cameras at my property, I basically took those pictures off those cameras and told a story about it. Wrote down the dates that I did it. So we baited an area and we had them going for a month or two. And I said, the cameras were going during this time. And I wrote down a list of the animals that I saw and how many times I thought I saw the same animals, and kind of tried to summarize it and say what I thought it taught me about my property. Well, we had a whole bunch of white-tailed deer. We saw some coyotes, but they weren't really a problem because we had these other animals. There's an abundance of cottontail rabbits. There's a whole lot of raccoons. And then because I saw a whole lot of raccoons, I might consider trapping some raccoons. We had an overabundance of hogs, and that's what's going to direct my hog trapping. That's why we're trapping hogs. So I showed that I was using that information that I got off my camera to make decisions in some other part of my wildlife activities. And that's why, to me, that's what made it a qualifying activity. Really, it's the matter of using that information for something and being able to show that it's teaching you something to direct your wildlife management going forward. So I hope that helps. I might, if you want to, that might be a better question. You might get a more technical answer from our biologist if you want to, pose that to me online or through an email. But really, it's just a matter of summarizing those photos, being able to say what you did, being able to say when you put the cameras out, what you used them for, maybe what you baited the area with, and then summarizing what you think the pictures told you.
Got it. How do you do strip mowing in a field of native grass and mesquite? Is that in a pattern, or should I do a percentage of a 20-acre area?
Yeah, it's more of a percentage. It's more of a, kind of like a third. It doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't have to be perfect. None of this is a perfect science. So strip mowing is basically the art of, it's an art. We had an accountant once that told us that accounting was an art, not a science or something. I thought, man, that's scary. But accounting, strip mowing, it's an art. It's just how you want to do it. It doesn't need to be straight strips. I know a guy that just meanders through his property, and mows roughly a third of it and leaves some of it long, leaves some of it tall. By doing that, you're creating, you're creating edge. And the more, ragged you do it, you think about, a guy told me one time about prescribed burns. This gentleman liked doing prescribed burns. He would say, I do them the way the good Lord would do them. Nobody, burns in nature don't burn a square. They kind of meander through an area. And the same with strip mowing. It normally, animals don't find an edge that's a block. Doesn't mean you can't do blocks or do straight strips and to mow 3 strips, move over 3 or 4, mow 3 strips, move over 3 or 4. But you can also just meander through an area, mow circles, mow pictures if you want to. You're creating edge. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be about a third of the area. And then you just document what you did. You show that you did it. It's pretty easy to show that. And be able to say that, why you did it. You did it because it's providing an edge. It's providing cover for small animals. But that's a great activity and one that I'd love to see more people do.
How often do we need to maintain wood duck houses?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I don't know. They're usually over the water, so people don't maintain them a whole lot. They're kind of wood duck boxes, in my understanding, are kind of like quail houses. I'm not quail houses. I'm sorry, that was wrong. Owl houses. So our owl shack, we have this owl shack that sits way up in a tree, about 30 feet up in a tree. We don't maintain it. We don't do anything with it other than every once in a while we'll maybe throw some pebbles at it and a little owl will pop out. Wood duck boxes are kind of the same. You just kind of monitor them. If you ever see ducks around them or see something using them, by all means, take a photograph. It's the fact that you're there and maybe you're checking them, once a year or so, or so often, making sure that they don't get filled up with predators or something like that. I don't know that that's a very good answer. I know there's probably a more technical recommendation in Avalon. If you will remember that, I will get it for someone, for them. But if you're checking that nest box, if you take a couple pictures of it throughout the year showing that it's not, there's not a raccoon living in it or something like that, then it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Awesome, will do, Tim. And
Right.
kind of same question around bird boxes, and you had already mentioned owl shacks, but with the bird boxes, do they check those kind of once a year as well?
Yeah, so bird houses are a little different. The wood duck boxes are, they're a little harder to access, and that's a different category. Songbird boxes, technically you need to check them at least once a year. Twice a year is better. And I think on that timing, document that we have in your plan, it gives you the better times to check bird houses. Avalon, do me a favor, make a note. Make a note that if that timing document, make sure it has on there the best times to check bird houses and the best times to fill feeders.
Mhm.
If you'll make a note and remind me to ask our biologist to make sure we have that on a form that's included in that document. And just remind me to do that or I'll forget. But as far as birdhouses go, we like to check them twice a year. So we check them in the winter. I'll check them in December timeframe because the birds aren't using them. And then I'll check them, maybe January, early February before the breeding season. So I'll check them October through December. I might check them, and then January, February, I might check them again. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I want to do it outside the breeding season, outside the spring when the birds are using them most. But you can check them. That's the other thing to remember. You can check them during the spring. You can certainly check them during the spring. The little baby birds will be in them, and it's kind of fun to go check them out.
Awesome.
But a couple times a year is good.
So what is proof of hog kills, and is this all year long?
Yeah, that is all year long, anytime, any day. Texas Parks and Wildlife, that's one of the only predators that their stance is eradication. They want to get rid of all of them if we ever could. But yeah, so documentation is as unpleasant as it can be. It's taking a picture and documenting that you killed that hog. We removed a lot of hogs from our property a few years back, and had what I called the hog log, which was just a big old long list of the days we were out there, how long we spent, and how many hogs we dispatched of, and then we included some pictures. I didn't send every picture of every dead hog to the county. I just sent a few because I didn't figure they wanted to look at all of them. And some of them, it's not. But same with trapping. If you're trapping hogs and hauling them off, take some photographs to prove it. But yeah, that's how you do it. Same with, so one of the habitat control activities is game population management. So we deer hunt on our property some. One of the pictures that was in this presentation was, a picture of my son with a deer. That was one of the pictures we used as documentation that we harvested some deer that year and removed some mouths for the property, from the property.
Awesome. And so if they do trap hogs, what do they do with them once they're trapped? Where do you usually take them to?
That's up to you. I don't know. I don't know. Some people, there are people that will come pick them up. What I would do in that instance is, depending on what county you're in, the best person to talk to about that is the Ag Extension Service. So every county has an AgriLife Extension Office. It's AGRILIFE, AgriLife. So if you just look up, like I'm in Hayes County AgriLife. If you look that up on Google, it'll give you the number to the Hayes County AgriLife Extension. So go to your AgriLife Extension, contact them and say, well, I'm trapping hogs. What do I do with them? There may be somebody in the area that will come and pick them up. There may be there are some places that actually harvest them and use the food to feed people and other ways to get rid of them. There are people who trap them and dispatch of them right there and haul them off into a ravine. There's different ways to do it, but if you don't want them on your property, then you'll have to find somebody to help you to remove them.
Got it.
And the AgriLife Extension is the best place to do that.
Awesome. So what qualifies as a brush pile?
Okay, what qualifies as a brush pile? Big open airy brush piles. Not the stack of sticks I've got out behind my house here that have been there for a couple of years that need to be removed. But think big open and area, about the size of a VW van. Big brush piles. It doesn't have to be that, but that's a productive brush pile. A big brush pile with the large stumps in the bottom. So as you're cutting down mesquite trees or cutting down, cedar trees or something like that, put the big limbs and big stumps in the bottom to make a canopy and stack the lighter brush up on top. So the example I give is a little rabbit running from a fox. You want him to be able to run into that brush pile and out the other side. You don't want him to run in there and get stuck and have his back end sticking out to where the fox can grab him. Make it big, open, and airy to where predators and prey can run through it, and animals can even bed down in it if they want to. And then to make them productive through the years, you can take an old brush pile and fluff it up. Prop it back up with larger stumps or something like that and stack new brush on top of it. But brush piles should be open and airy. Once they're broken down into the ground and just becoming and deteriorating, that's a good time to burn them and get rid of them, because at that point they're only good for snakes and rats.
Got it. And are there any legislative issues being followed by Plateau that could impact wildlife management? Any issues that we should be pursuing?
There are, and I don't know them off the top of my head. I'm not that guy. I wish I probably should be more, but I'm not. I don't really hadn't personally stayed up with that. Shane Kiefer's very on top of that. We are very on top of anything that is wildlife, or land oriented in general, because we do have Plateau. We have Brian Gresham and other members of our family of companies who are involved in all of that. So we can. That's a neat idea, Avalon, is to get with Shane and basically get some type of write-up on the legislative items that are going on right now that have to do with that might impact our landowners. We need to be able to put something out that kind of summarizes those and where they stand at the moment. I think we're obviously well suited to do that. So if you'll remind me, or if you or me or Cameron can visit with Shane to make sure we get that done. I think that'd be a great thing to send out to our landowners. If y'all want something like that, I'll tell you what, there's a bunch of people listening right now. If you're interested in hearing about the legislative, just different issues and different matters that we might be following, my email address is right here, tmilligan@plateauvildlife.com. Shoot me an email and just say, hey, I'd like to be on that list of people. I don't want to bother everybody with it because not everybody's going to be all that interested. But if you're interested, let me know, and then we'll see about putting something together that will make it accessible to anyone who has those questions. Do you think that's a good idea, Evelyn?
I think that's great, and that's
Okay.
something that we could publish on our blog too,
Yeah,
so people can
absolutely. I think it's a
access
great
on our
idea.
website.
I think it's a
Yeah,
great idea. We were just talking about the other day. I'm sorry I don't have, a straightforward answer to that question, and I spent a lot of time on it, but we'll get you an answer. We will get you an answer. It's a great question.
awesome. Can you use a large brush pile for more than 1 year as an activity?
Yeah, you sure can. I would, again, I would be active in my management. So if I was going to use that brush pile again, I would go out there and I would stack some new brush on it, or I would prop it up a little bit, maybe stick a couple extra, big limbs underneath it or something like that to fluff it up a little, or, just add new brush, something like that, and take a couple new photographs. It's a good example. Same example would be with erosion control. So I've got a big blown out part of our road at our farm, and we stacked a bunch of boulders and brush and other things on the upstream side of that deal many years ago, and we get to count that for 10 years. And we did it, I don't know, 5 or 8 years ago. We need to do it again, but it's still there. We haven't really done much of it, but we take new pictures every year. I don't send them the same pictures I took 10 years ago. I'll take new pictures. I'll kind of describe, well, I went down and I checked it, maybe added a little bit of brush, something like that. So that's really all you need to do with a brush pile. It can continue to qualify as long as you're actively monitoring and actively managing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for native seed producers in Central Texas? Most mixes available seem to contain non-native seeds in the mix.
Yeah. Shoot me an email, Avalon. Make sure I get back to this person with that. That's another one that, we have some links on our website. If you go to our website, we have a links page, and I believe there is a link on there to whether it's Wild Seed Farms or who it is, but there's a few of them that are really good. And there's some of them that, are going to be more native than others, but it's really about it's a good question. I'd love to get you a better answer.
I'll be sure to follow up on that, Tim.
Thank you.
Um, what do you recommend to control fire ants?
So we use Extinguish Plus is what we have used for many years. We may be using something a little different now. We use Extinguish Plus fire ant bait. There's a lot of different fire ant baits out there. It's really about being, kind of active in your management and doing it consistently. So the recommendation is to treat them and, to monitor an area and treat the fire ants that you see, treat around the mounds, and then to do it consistently, every spring, every fall. I learned a long time ago, you treat in the spring to knock them down in the fall. You treat in the fall to knock them down in the spring. So the more consistent you can be with your treatment, the better results you will have.
Awesome. Uh, Back to brush piles. Is there a certain number of brush piles that you have to do to qualify as an activity?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. I knew when we got on brush pile, someone was going to ask that. I don't know. There is, yes. I can't remember what that amount is. It will be, if you've got a wildlife management plan from us, it will be in your wildlife management plan. If you told your biologist you were interested in doing or doing brush piles, it should be in there. If not, give us a call, or shoot me an email, or Avalon, and I can get you an answer from your biologist. Because there is an amount that you need to do. I just can't remember exactly what it is, whether it's one per acre, or because it's really about the habitat that you have. If you've got a whole bunch of trees around and a whole bunch of brush around, you really don't need any brush piles. And so you may be looked at as an inappropriate activity for that area because there's already enough brush. I wouldn't build brush piles on the back half of my property. There's no need for any brush back there. You couldn't stuff a brush pile back there. But if you've got a big open coastal pasture like the front of my property, then, and 4 or 5 of them may be appropriate in that area. It's kind of about the area, and it's not so cut and dried. But we can certainly get you much better answer than
Got it.
that. I have
Uh,
given.
this was a question about legislation, and we might need to circle back with this landowner too, Tim.
Yeah, yeah.
She was asking about House Bill 3770 making it through the legislature.
Yeah, we'll need to circle back.
Got it. Got it. Just making a note really quick.
Yeah, sorry. I haven't. I rely on some very smart people here to go, hey, Tim, you need to be looking out for this. And I haven't. I remember there was some conversation about a couple things the other day, and I think, helping somebody get a wildlife management plan and probably wasn't listening as well as I should have. But
Yep,
we'll get an answer to that question. I don't know anything about it personally.
got it. Um, does planting native milkweed count as an activity to support the monarch butterflies?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. And I know there's, probably a certain amount that needs to be planted or a certain area where you need to plant. And that's a good question for your biologist. So if you did get a wildlife management plan from us, call your biologist and ask them about how much of that you might need to do and where to get the seeds or whatever. If you need help with that, if you didn't, call us and we'll get you an answer from one of our biologists about how much of that you might need to do.
Awesome. Well, that looks to be the last of our questions for the evening.
That was fantastic. Avalon, thank you so much for making this happen and for helping us pull this off again. All of you who showed up, thank you so much. It means a ton to me that y'all came here, and hopefully you're a little more prepared to do your wildlife management and to get some fun and enjoyment out of it. I'll say it again, if you're not getting some fun and enjoyment out of it, please call us. Call me directly. I'll try to turn that around. Call Cameron Bain. If you have any questions about getting started or need any help getting started, again, thanks a bunch. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And go out there and do something good for your wildlife. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Tim. Good night.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good night. That was great. Outstanding.